Welcome back to the deep dive, where we take a whole stack of sources, different articles, research notes, and really dig in to find the most important insights just for you.
That's right.
Today, we're diving into some really fascinating territory. We're looking at how yogic philosophy views altered states of consciousness. Things like, astral travel and lucid dreaming.
Mm-hmm. And from the yogic viewpoint, these aren't just psychological blips or weird things that happen sometimes. They're actually understood within a very deep, ancient philosophical system.
Right.
They're seen as, as real dimensions, maybe subtle ones, but real, and potential ways to gain deeper insight, maybe even leading towards self-realization.
Exactly. And our source material for this, it's this really rich mix. We're pulling from foundational traditional Indian philosophy, Vedanta, Sōkya, the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali, bits from the old Puras.
Classics.
Yeah, and then seeing how modern masters interpreted and taught these ideas. People like Paramahansa Yogananda, Ramana Maharshi, Swami Vivekananda. It's a powerful combination.
It really is.
Yeah.
And it offers a perspective that's, it's radically different from the typical Western view, isn't it?
How so?
Well, the common Western idea, often, is that consciousness somehow comes from the brain. It emerges from matter.
Like the brain produces it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But this tradition flips that entirely. It says consciousness is primary. It's the fundamental reality itself. And when you start there, states like dreaming, or consciously separating awareness from the physical body, they take on a whole different significance.
Okay, and that's really our mission today, to unpack these concepts, because let's face it, they're often misunderstood in the West, maybe seen as kind of fringe.
We're dismissed altogether.
Right. So we want to understand their deep roots in yogic philosophy, explore the how and the why of approaching them through practice, and see how they're viewed not as just like psychic tricks or ways to escape.
Not just escapism, though.
But as potentially profound tools on the path to spiritual awakening, to self-realization.
It's really about exploring the yogic map of our inner world, our inner cosmos, you could say, and understanding how these different states fit into that bigger journey of realizing who you truly are.
Okay, let's dive in then. To even start making sense of this, we have to lay down the basic map first. The yogic cartography of consciousness itself, how they chart the inner landscape.
Yes, this is absolutely the starting point, and it is a major, major difference from a lot of modern materialist thinking. Yogic philosophy and Indian philosophy more broadly, it says consciousness, call it Brahman, call it Atman, is primary. It's the irreducible reality.
So it's not a product of matter?
No, it's the other way around, you could say. It's the fundamental ground of being. Everything else arises within it or from it.
Okay, so consciousness isn't just something my brain does. It's more like the basic stuff of existence.
That's a good way to put it. It is what is. And within that primary reality, they make a really crucial distinction. There's the pure awareness itself, unchanging, untouched, sometimes called the seer.
The witness.
The witness, exactly. The silent, eternal witness. And then there's the mind, the siddha. The mind is seen as something that emerges within consciousness. It's an ever-changing field, thoughts, feelings, memories, perceptions, all that mental activity.
Okay. So the seer is like the light, maybe, and the mind is the stuff illuminated by the light, or the screen the movie plays on.
The seer is the unchanging light, yes, or the awareness of the screen. The siddha, the mind, is more like the projector and the constantly changing images flashing on the screen. The seer is the ultimate subject. The mind, with all its fluctuations, is actually an object to that awareness.
That's a big shift.
It is. And grasping that difference is foundational, because it totally changes how you look at altered states of consciousness.
Right. Because if consciousness isn't locked inside the physical brain, then things like dreams or visions or even feeling like you're outside your body, they aren't necessarily just, random brain static.
Exactly. They aren't just malfunctions.
They could be actual experiences happening within consciousness, just maybe on a different level, a different kind of reality.
Precisely. They're not aberrations to be ignored. They are potentially valid domains of experience, valid fields for exploration and gaining knowledge, all within this vast territory of consciousness.
And this understanding ties right into the core goal of yoga itself, doesn't it? Like what Patanjali laid out in the Yoga Sutras.
Absolutely. Patanjali's second sutra, probably the most famous one, Yoga Shita Vritti Nirodha. Yoga is the cessation, the stilling of the fluctuations of the mind, the vis.
The mental chatter.
The mental chatter, the waves, the modifications. The whole point is to quiet that relentless activity, to still the projector, you could say, so that the seer, your true self, can rest in its own essential nature.
Which is?
Pure, undisturbed awareness. Peace.
So these altered states, deep meditation, lucid dreaming, subtle body travel, they aren't about escaping reality, like running away from life.
No, not in the authentic traditions.
They're more like ways to find a more authentic reality by getting control over those beauties, those fluctuations.
Exactly. They're seen as potential pathways, not necessarily the destination itself, but pathways. When the mind gets quiet or when its focus shifts in a controlled way, you might access deeper layers of reality. And importantly, the yogic tradition considers these direct experiences a valid way of knowing, a pramana.
A means of knowledge.
Yes. We usually rely on inference, anumana, or testimony, like scripture, agama. But direct experiential insight, pachaka, is often held as the highest form of knowing. Experiencing these states consciously can give you a direct grasp, a direct apprehension of existence's mysteries that just thinking about them can't provide.
That's really powerful. So, okay, if consciousness is primary and these states are pathways within it, how do we as individuals fit into this map? How do we navigate these different domains? This is where the idea of the three bodies comes in, right? The Sharita Traya and the five heaths.
Spot on. This is the yogic anatomy of the human being, so a really sophisticated map. It describes the individual soul, the jiva, as being sort of dressed in nested layers or vehicles.
Like Russian dolls.
A bit like that, yeah. These layers allow the soul to experience different dimensions of reality, from the most solid and physical, the gross, all the way to the most subtle, the causal level. Understanding this structure is absolutely key to making sense of how practices like astral travel or lucid dreaming are thought to work.
Okay, let's break them down. Layer 1, the one we know best, the gross body. Sthula Sharira.
Right, our physical frame. Mortal, made of the 5 gross elements, earth, water, fire, air, ether. In their dense form, it's tangible. It has birth, growth, decay, death. This body is our vehicle for experiencing the waking state, Jagra.
Our everyday reality.
Our everyday reality, and it's equated with the annamaya kosha. That means the sheath composed of food, because, well, it's built and sustained by physical food and interaction with the physical world. It's our tool for dealing with the outside world.
Makes total sense. Now, within that, or interpenetrating it, is the subtle body, the sūkṣma shara. This seems crucial for today's topic.
Absolutely crucial. The subtle body is non-physical. Think of it as an energetic and psychological vehicle that exists within or alongside the gross body. It's said to be composed of 5 subtle elements.
Okay.
And this is considered the seat of our thoughts, our emotions, our vital life force, prana, and also our senses and intellect, but in their subtle, non-physical form. It's the main instrument for experiencing the dream state, svapna.
So when we dream, from this perspective, it's actually the subtle body having the experience, not just the brain replaying stuff.
That's the classical understanding, yes. The subtle body is active, perceiving and interacting within a subtle environment projected by the mind. And significantly, this subtle body is also what's believed to transmigrate after the physical body dies.
Ah, so that's what carries on.
It's the vehicle that carries the soul, along with all the accumulated impressions from our actions and experiences, our karmic baggage, you could say, the saskara.
So the subtle body is basically what continues the soul's journey after physical death. That's huge.
It's a core concept.
Huh.
And within this subtle body, there are even finer layers, 3 more sheaths or koshas. There's the prakamaikoshka, the energy sheath. This governs the life force, the prai, that animates the physical body.
Like the bioelectric field, maybe?
Kind of analogous, yeah. Then there's the madhamaikosha, the mental sheath. This is the realm of the lower mind, everyday thoughts, feelings, desires, emotions. This layer is particularly active during dreaming.
Makes sense. Dreams are very emotional and thought-filled.
Exactly. And finally, there's the vijnanamaya kosha, the intellect sheath. This holds the higher mind discernment, buddhi, wisdom, the ability to discriminate between the real and unreal.
Wow, it's like a whole inner blueprint. an energetic and mental version of ourselves operating on a finer level.
That's a great way to think of it. And deeper still, underlying even the subtle body is the causal body, the kāraṇa.
The seed body, you called it.
Yes, the seed body. It's the most subtle layer of the individual. It's considered the blueprint holding all our latent karma, the deep impressions, the vasanas that will eventually sprout into future experiences, future lives. This body is the vehicle associated with a state of deep, dreamless sleep, sūkṣma.
And it's linked to bliss, the Nandamaya kusha.
Yes, the sheath of bliss, because in deep sleep, the mind and senses are totally withdrawn, folded back into their source. The soul rests very close to its true nature, experiencing a kind of temporary peace or bliss. There's no disturbance from thoughts or objects.
But you mentioned that the source material points out a complication here, especially in Advaita Vedanta, something about avidya.
Yes, that's a critical point, especially from the non-dual perspective. Avidya is often translated as ignorance, but it's more profound than just not knowing stuff. It's a kind of primal misseeing, a fundamental error in perception that makes us mistake the temporary, the changing, the illusory, for what's permanent and real. And this avidya, this root ignorance, is said to reside primarily in the causal body. It's what veils our true nature, the Atman, the self. It prevents us from directly recognizing our unity with the ultimate reality.
So the causal body holds both the seeds of future lives and the fundamental ignorance that keeps us cycling through them.
Exactly. It's the root cause from which the subtle and gross bodies eventually manifest. And this is why the path of yoga, in all its forms, is fundamentally about purification. Purifying all these bodies and sheaths, but especially the subtle body, the sūkṣma sharira.
Through practices like
Pranayama, breathwork, meditation, ethical living. These aren't just about feeling good. They're seen as essential for cleansing and stabilizing these inner vehicles, preparing them, making them fit for higher states of consciousness, for undertaking conscious journeys into these subtler dimensions.
That makes sense. You wouldn't want to take a road trip in a rickety car full of junk. You need to prepare the vehicle.
Precisely. And this preparation is also needed to really understand the three main states of experience we cycle through daily. The Avastatraya. Vedanta, particularly in the Matsya Upanishad, really breaks these down.
This analysis is seen as vital, right? A prerequisite for understanding the self.
Absolutely. There aren't just different levels of being awake or asleep. They're understood as distinct arenas, distinct dimensions of experience, each with its own identifier, its own vehicle, its own way of perceiving reality.
Okay, state number one, waking, Jagrat.
Our normal, everyday reality.
Yeah.
In this state, our consciousness is turned outward, bahi prajna. We identify fully with the gross physical body, the sthula shura. The experiencer here is called Vijva.
Vijva.
Yes. And Vijva uses the physical senses to perceive and interact with the gross objects of the external world. This state corresponds to the A sound in the sacred syllable AUM.
Got it. Waking state, Vijva, gross body, physical world, A. Next up, dreaming, Svapna.
Here, consciousness turns inward, onto praja. The physical senses are shut down, essentially. The experiencer in the dream state is called Taijasa.
Taijasa, the luminous one.
Yes, often interpreted that way. Taijasa experiences reality not through the gross body, but through the subtle body, the sūkṣma sharira, especially that mental sheath, the manomaya kosha, the objects in a dream. They're subtle. They're creations of the mind itself.
Well, not external things.
No, they're generated from memories, from latent impressions, vasanas, from subconscious material. The mind projects a whole world, seemingly real, without needing any input from the outside physical world. This state corresponds to the U sound of AUM.
That's a key point. The dream world is within the subtle body, projected by the mind. Okay, and the third state, deep sleep, sūkṣma.
In deep sleep, consciousness is withdrawn even further. It becomes undifferentiated, unified. The mind, the intellect, the senses, they all temporarily dissolve back into their cause, the causal body. The experiencer here is called prajna.
Praja, the knower.
Yes, the knower or the intelligence associated with the causal body, the kāraṇa. In this state, there's no experience of objects, gross or subtle. It's a state of deep rest, unified consciousness, and bliss, Ananda. The soul is very close to its true nature here.
It's still veiled.
Still veiled by that fundamental ignorance, avidya, which resides in the causal body. This state corresponds to the M sound of AUM.
So AUM maps onto waking, dreaming, deep sleep. We cycle through these constantly. But the really profound insight here, the kicker, is that because these states come and go, none of them can be you. Not ultimately.
Exactly. That's the core of the Vedantic analysis. You are aware of the waking state. You are aware of the dream state. You even have a memory, a sense of having slept deeply and peacefully, which means awareness was present even when there were no objects.
Right. I know I slept well or badly.
So if you are the awareness that perceives these states changing, then you, that underlying awareness, must be something constant, something present throughout all three states, but independent of them. That unchanging awareness is the true self, the Atman, the witness, the Saka.
Like being the movie screen. The screen is always there, whether the waking movie, the dream movie, or the deep sleep blank screen is showing.
That's a perfect analogy. Or, like the source material suggests, think of a spectator watching a play. The spectator sees the different acts, the different characters, Vishva acting in the waking world, Taijasa in the dream world, Praja in the deep sleep state. But the spectator remains separate, unaffected by the drama unfolding.
So recognizing yourself as that unchanging witness, separate from the roles you play in these states, that's a huge step towards freedom.
A fundamental step towards liberation, yes.
Yeah.
It breaks the identification with the temporary. The source text, by the way, has a really helpful table that lays all this out. The states, the experiencers, the bodies, the consciousness direction. It's great for keeping these distinct layers clear.
Yeah, that table's super useful. Okay, so with this intricate map of consciousness, the bodies, the states, the witness, now we can actually talk about the conscious journeys themselves. Let's get into sūkṣma yatra, the conscious journey of the subtle body, what we often call astral travel.
Right. So within the yogic tradition, sūkṣma yatra isn't just a random out-of-body feeling. It's understood as an intentional, deliberate process. It's the conscious disengagement of that subtle body, the sūkṣma, from the physical gross body, the sthula.
And the purpose?
The purpose is to navigate these subtle, non-physical dimensions or planes of existence, which are called lokas.
And this isn't something just anyone can do. It's considered a siddhi, a power.
Yes. Traditionally, it's classified as a siddhi, a kind of paranormal power or accomplishment. It's something developed through advanced spiritual disciplines, through dedicated sadhana. It implies a significant degree of mastery over the mind and the vital energy.
Are there examples in the texts?
Oh, yes. The Bhagavata Purak, for instance, mentions various siddhis. One is manojava, which means moving at the speed of mind. This can imply not just the subtle body traveling, but an even higher mastery, where the yogi's consciousness instantly goes somewhere, and the physical body can even seem to follow. It shows complete dominance of consciousness over form.
Wow, that's hard to even imagine. So how is this conscious journey fundamentally different from just regular dreaming, where you said the subtle body is also active?
The key difference lies in volition, lucidity, and control. A deliberate sūkṣma yatra is initiated consciously with waking awareness. You know you are separating, you remain aware, you can direct your experience, make choices.
Whereas a normal dream,
while it involves the subtle body's activity, is typically passive. We're usually swept along, it feels chaotic, often just a replay of subconscious stuff, not a purposeful exploration. We don't usually realize we're dreaming, let alone control it.
But you mentioned the source brings up a philosophical point here. Some schools suggest maybe even normal dreams involve the subtle body actually leaving.
Yes, that's a fascinating nuance from schools like Visishtadvaita. They suggest that even in ordinary dreaming, the sūkṣma might actually leave the physical body to perceive real, though subtle, objects in subtle realms. It wouldn't just be a purely subjective projection inside the head.
So if that's true.
If that view is correct, then sūkṣma yatra would be the fully conscious, deliberate, and controlled version of something that happens naturally and unconsciously every night anyway.
That idea that we might be doing this unconsciously all the time in sleep really changes things, doesn't it?
It absolutely reframes the whole phenomenon. But regardless of which view you take on ordinary dreams, the spiritual purpose of conscious, subtle body travel is seen as incredibly profound.
Why? What's the core benefit?
It provides direct, irrefutable, personal proof, the pratyeka, that direct experience we talked about, that your existence, your consciousness, is not limited to your physical body.
Yeah.
That it's not dependent on the physical form.
And that must be the ultimate antidote to the fear of death.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
The deepest root of our fear of death is that false identification with this physical body that we know is going to perish. Dhata Buddhi, the notion, I am the body.
Right.
By consciously experiencing your awareness, your vitality, functioning outside of the physical shell, you gain an unshakable direct knowledge, a conviction in the immortality of the soul, of consciousness itself. It stops being just a belief or a nice idea.
It becomes something you know because you've experienced it.
Exactly. It's like getting a preview of the afterlife, or at least non-physical existence, while you're still alive. That fundamentally transforms your relationship with mortality.
So if someone achieves this conscious journey, where do they actually go? What are these subtle planes, these lokas like?
Well, the yogic cosmology describes a universe with multiple layers, often counted as 14 primary lokas. But these aren't just like, other planets in space. They're more like distinct vibrational fields or states of consciousness, each with its own laws and inhabitants.
And the main one explored in these journeys?
The primary realm usually encountered first is called Bhuvarloka, or Antariko. This is the plane immediately above or subtler than our physical Earth plane, Bhuloka.
Antarikam, that means intermediate space, the atmosphere.
Exactly. It's often seen as a bridge world between the dense Earth and the higher celestial realms, Svarloka. It's described as a realm of subtle air and space, coexisting with our physical world, but vibrating faster. Psychic phenomena are more common there.
And it's populated.
Yes, it's said to be the abode of various non-physical beings, nature spirits, yakas, sometimes powerful or troublesome entities, akasas, ghosts or earthbound spirits, and also the spirits of ancestors, pits, not always sweetness and light. It can be incredibly vast and varied, reflecting all sorts of consciousness levels. Think of it like an inner dimension mirroring the complexity of the outer world. There are also much higher realms, like Siddhaloka, said to be inhabited by Siddhas perfected beings with innate powers who can travel freely between worlds. Advanced yogis might aim to reach these higher planes for guidance.
But, and this seems really important, even these subtle worlds, no matter how amazing they might seem, are still part of samsara, the cycle of birth and death.
Absolutely critical point. The source material is very clear on this. Experiencing these subtle realms, even blissful heavens, is still considered within the domain of conditioned existence. It's still governed by the laws of karma. These experiences are temporary.
So the goal isn't just to move to a nicer, subtle neighborhood permanently?
Definitely not. The ultimate goal in yoga isn't to become a long-term resident of some subtle paradise. It's to use these experiences to gain conviction, to learn, to purify oneself, but ultimately to transcend all relative planes, gross, subtle, causal, and attain moksha.
Yeah.
Liberation. Freedom in the absolute.
Which brings up that fascinating philosophical debate the source gets into about the reality of these planes. Are they objectively real places or just subjective mind stuff?
Yes, there's a real dialectic there within the tradition itself. You have schools and teachers, particularly those with a strong theistic or cosmological focus, like in the Puranas, or very vividly in the teachings of Paramahansa Yogananda, who describe these lokas as objectively real, structured worlds.
Yogananda's descriptions are incredibly detailed, aren't they?
Extremely. He talks about astral planets like Hiranyaloka, populated by beings with luminous fluid bodies made of lifetrons, who manifest things by will. For him, these were definite structured dimensions, part of a larger cosmic order that the soul journeys through. They existed independently of the person visiting them.
Okay, that's one view. Objective, subtle worlds. But then you have someone like Ramana Maharshi.
Yes. Ramana Maharshi, coming from the pure Advaita Vedanta perspective, represents the other pole. His approach was radically introspective. He consistently taught that any world you experience, whether it's this physical waking world or a subtle world you visit in a dream or an astral journey, is ultimately mithya.
Mithya, meaning illusory, like a dream.
Or dependently real, not non-existent while you're experiencing it, but lacking ultimate independent reality. Like a mirage in the desert, or the snake mistakenly perceived in a rope. It appears real, but it's a projection.
A projection of what?
A projection of the mind onto the single, non-dual reality of Brahman, the self. So from Ramana's viewpoint, an astral journey isn't really moving your subtle body to another place. It's a shift in consciousness where the mind projects a different level of apparent reality. The experience feels completely real to the experiencer at the time, but its ultimate status as a projection is understood upon awakening to the self.
So Yogananda says real places. Ramana says mind projections. That's quite a difference.
It is. And the source suggests maybe they aren't entirely contradictory, depending on the level you're looking from. Perhaps you navigate the phenomenal reality as if it's real, experiencing its structure, while holding the deeper wisdom that it, like everything perceived, ultimately resolves into the non-dual self. It's a kind of sophisticated, both-hand possibility.
Okay, fascinating. Let's shift from the outward journey of the subtle body to the inward journey, the journey within the dream state itself. Svapna sadhana, the discipline of dreaming, or lucid dreaming.
Right. Svapna is specifically the practice of achieving and, crucially, maintaining full conscious self-awareness while you are dreaming. You know you're dreaming while you're dreaming.
And this isn't a new idea, is it? Not just a modern Western thing.
Oh, absolutely not. While the term lucid dreaming is recent, the concept and the systematic techniques for cultivating it are ancient in the East. It's integral to traditions like Hindu Tantra and especially Tibetan Buddhist dream yoga, which they call Milam Neljor.
And in these traditions, it's not just for, fun, flying around or wish fulfillment.
No, definitely not the primary purpose. It's considered a serious spiritual practice, a sadhana. The main goal is to use the dream state as a kind of, a perfect laboratory.
A laboratory for what?
For gaining direct experiential insight into the illusory or dreamlike nature of all phenomenal reality, including waking life. The dream state is ideal because it's the clearest example of the mind creating an entire, seemingly solid world purely from its own substance, without any input from the physical senses.
Ah, I see. If you can become fully aware and recognize the dream as a mental projection while you're in it.
Exactly. It provides powerful proof of the mind's ability to construct what we perceive as reality. And the immediate goal within the lucid dream is to awaken your awareness and become a conscious, detached observer. To cultivate sakalpa, the attitude of the witness, right there amidst the dream characters and events.
So watching the dream unfold without getting lost in it, without fear or desire or identifying with the dream.
Precisely. You're training that core yogic skill of witnessing without entanglement. And this skill, this witness consciousness, is directly transferable to your waking life.
How so?
The same capacity to observe dream thoughts and emotions without getting swept away is what allows you to observe waking thoughts and emotions without being controlled by them. It leads towards the profound realization that the waking world, too, is a kind of mental construct, filtered, shaped, projected by our own consciousness, senses, and past conditioning. It helps you see the waking dream quality of everyday life. It helps see its mythia nature.
So it's about realizing the dreamlike nature of all experience. That's very different from, say, interpreting dreams for prophecies or messages.
Yes, the Indic traditions generally use the dream state for this kind of radical self-awareness and understanding of reality, rather than primarily for divination, which is more common in some other traditions.
Okay, so if it's a systematic practice, a sadhana, how do people actually cultivate this? It's not just hoping you get lucky and become lucid.
Definitely not left to chance. The source talks about specific techniques designed to bridge the gap between waking and sleeping consciousness, to carry awareness across that threshold. Two powerful methods highlighted are Yoga Nidra and meditation on the Ajna chakra.
Yoga Nidra, that translates as yogic sleep.
Right? Yes. It's an ancient tantric practice, often considered a primary gateway technique for inducing lucid dreams, specifically wake-induced lucid dreams, or wilds.
How does it work?
It's a guided process. It systematically leads you into a state of very deep physical, mental, and emotional relaxation. But crucially, while you maintain a state of heightened yet effortless awareness, you don't fall asleep mentally.
So you relax the body completely, but keep the mind awake.
Exactly. It guides you deliberately into and through the hypnagogic state. That's the threshold between waking and sleep. It's often full of vivid imagery, strange bodily sensations, sounds.
The state where you might jerk awake sometimes.
That can happen there, yes. The core technique in Yoga Nidra often involves systematically rotating your awareness through different parts of the body. This is adapted from an old tantric practice called nyasa, which means to place consciousness.
Okay.
As the body goes deeper and deeper into relaxation, mimicking sleep, the mind is trained through the guidance to stay alert, present, lucid. By consciously navigating that hypnagogic threshold without losing awareness, you can essentially keep the light of consciousness on as you enter the dream state directly from wakefulness.
So you watch yourself fall asleep, basically, and enter the dream consciously.
That's the goal of wild induction via Yoga Nidra, yes. It's incredible training for stabilizing your awareness under very unusual conditions. It helps overcome fears that can arise in that threshold state, like sleep paralysis phenomena, and it gives you conscious access to see the mind's creative process right as dreams are forming.
Wow. And the other technique, meditating on the Ajna chakra, the third eye.
Yes. The Ajna chakra is the sixth main energy center in the subtle body. Energetically, it's located in the space between the eyebrows. It's considered the seat of intuition, inner vision, wisdom, imagination. Basically, our connection point to subtle perception and higher consciousness.
And meditating on this helps with lucidity.
It's considered a very powerful method. Practices might involve gently focusing your attention or even your inner gaze at this point, sometimes visualizing a luminous indigo or violet light there, or chanting specific seed mantras like OM and feeling the vibration resonate in that area.
There's mention of specific frequencies too, like 963 hertz.
Yes, the source notes that some modern approaches incorporate things like specific sound frequencies, such as 963 hertz, which are sometimes claimed to stimulate the pineal gland. The pineal is often physiologically linked to the Ajna chakra region, seen as a kind of physical gateway. Whether the frequency itself works or it's the focused attention, the aim is similar, activating this center of inner awareness.
So the core idea is sharpening that inner focus.
Fundamentally, yes. Regular, single-pointed concentration, hara, on the ajaya strengthens the mind's ability to stay focused and to observe its own contents without getting lost. This heightened inner awareness, built up during waking meditation, tends to naturally carry over into the sleep state.
Making it more likely you'll just spontaneously realize, oh, I'm dreaming.
Exactly. That spontaneous recognition is called svapna bodha, dream awakening. And furthermore, an awakened Ajna chakra is said to enhance your ability to understand the symbolic language of dreams, allowing you to extract deeper meaning or guidance from them, even if they aren't fully lucid. The source also provides a really useful comparison table, by the way, laying out the key differences between astral travel and lucid dreaming side by side. Helps keep their distinct aims clear.
Yeah, that table really clarifies how they fit differently into the yogic path, even though they both involve altered states. Okay, now, the source brings in these modern masters, Yogananda, Ramana Maharshi, Vivekananda. How did they take these ancient, sometimes pretty esoteric ideas and translate them for people today?
Well, each of them really embodied a specific stream or path within the broader yogic tradition, and their own realization and teaching style colored how they approached and explained these states. They made these profound concepts accessible, each highlighting different facets of the journey.
Let's start with Paramahansa Yogananda. He seems like a blend of the yogi and the bhakta, the path of devotion.
Very much so. Yogananda's teachings present a very detailed, often quite theistic cosmology. For him, the subtle realms weren't just subjective states of mind. They were tangible, objectively real dimensions that the soul actually travels through on its evolutionary path back to God.
He gave some of the most vivid descriptions, right?
Absolutely. So the most detailed accounts of the astral world in modern literature. He described it as a luminous blueprint of the physical, a realm of pure energy and light. Beings there have radiant bodies made of subtle energy, lifetrons he called them. They could shape their environment and objects just through willpower.
Sounds amazing.
He described it as far more beautiful, harmonious, and free than the physical world. And for Yogananda, conscious subtle body travel, sūkṣma yatra, wasn't just possible, it was desirable. He even called the astral world our true original home.
And that famous story in his autobiography of a yogi about his guru Sri Yukteswar appearing to him after death.
Yes, the resurrection on the astral planet Hiranyaloka That was a cornerstone for Yogananda, demonstrating that life, learning, and spiritual progress continue on multiple planes beyond physical death. Souls work out their karma across these different dimensions. So for him, conscious astral travel was a practical tool, a way to gain firsthand knowledge, understand the reasons for earthly suffering, commune with saints and guides, and develop unshakable faith in the soul's eternal journey.
Okay, so Yogananda, emphasizing the objective reality and the value of exploring these subtle dimensions. Then we have Ramana Maharshi, the Jnani, the sage of non-dual wisdom, a completely different angle.
Radically different, yes. Ramana's teaching, rooted in pure Advaita Vedanta, was relentlessly introspective. He constantly directed the seeker away from phenomena, whether gross or subtle, and pointed them back towards the source of the I thought, the self.
And he famously said the waking state is no more real than a dream.
Exactly. He taught that both Jagrat, waking, and Svapna, dreaming, are ultimately mithya. They are creations of the mind, or more specifically, the ego. The entire perceived reality, the trinity of seer, seeing, and seen, or jiva, yavada, jaga, only appears real as long as the ego, the sense of separate self, is active.
And when the ego subsides?
Like in deep sleep or ultimately in self-realization, that whole projected world appearance vanishes. So for Ramana, the value in thinking about dreams or any altered state wasn't about exploring other realms.
It was about understanding the mind's power to create illusions.
Precisely. He used the dream state as the perfect analogy to help people grasp the contingent, dependent, illusory nature of the waking state itself. Just as you wake up from a dream and realize it wasn't ultimately real, you wake up to the self and realize the waking world was also a form of dream, a mythy appearance.
So he wasn't interested in astral travel or powers.
He consistently discouraged questions about seas or subtle travel. He saw them as potential distractions, things that keep the mind fascinated with outward phenomena, even subtle ones, instead of turning inward to find the source, the self.
His whole path was Atmavikara, self-inquiry. Who am I?
Relentlessly. Trace the feeling I back to its source. That inquiry, he taught, dissolves the ego and reveals the ever-present non-dual witness, the Atman. For Ramana, the only real journey is the inward one, into the spiritual heart, the core of being, where all worlds, all states are discovered to be nothing other than the self.
Wow. Okay, one path exploring outward, one path diving inward. Where does Swami Vivekananda fit? He's often seen as the Raja Yogi, the synthesizer who brought yoga to the West.
Vivekananda played a pivotal role. He presented these ancient philosophies, yoga and Vedanta, in a way that resonated with the rational, empirical mindset of the West. He framed yogic psychology in terms of levels of the mind, the subconscious, the conscious, and the superconscious.
Okay, subconscious is instincts, impressions, where dreams often bubble up from. Conscious is our everyday reason. What about the superconscious?
For Vivekananda, the superconscious was the highest level, accessed through intense concentration, then meditation, jnana. This wasn't subconscious, it was transrational. It was the source of genius, intuition, inspiration, and direct spiritual revelation. It provided knowledge that reason couldn't reach, but which was verifiable through experience.
So things like lucid dreams or astral visions would come from the superconscious?
Yes, he saw them as functions of the mind operating at its highest potential. He taught that the universe we normally perceive is just a sliver of reality, filtered through our limited senses and mind. To grasp the whole picture, you have to analyze and master the mind itself, using concentration as the key tool. A concentrated mind for Vivekananda is an incredibly powerful instrument.
The key to accessing higher states.
Exactly. The key to verifying the existence of the soul, the subtle dimensions, and transforming belief into direct personal experience. So subtle experiences weren't mystical oddities. They were natural functions of the mind working on that superconscious level, accessible through the discipline of Raja Yoga.
So 3 masters, 3 angles. Yogananda, the devotional explorer mapping objective subtle worlds. Ramana, the non-dual sage deconstructing all experiences to point only to the self. And Vivekananda, the pragmatic yogi, seeing subtle states as verifiable results of superconscious mental power cultivated through concentration.
That captures it well. They show how within the vastness of yoga, these phenomena can be approached and understood differently, depending on the path, whether it's primarily devotional, bhakti, knowledge-based, jnana, or focused on mental mastery, Raja.
But one thing seems consistent across the board. None of them treat these explorations lightly. The source material really hammers home that this isn't something to just dabble in casually. It requires a solid foundation.
Absolutely essential. The tradition is crystal clear. Without a stable, purified, resilient mind-body system, trying to access these states can be confusing, disorienting, even psychologically dangerous. The preparatory work isn't optional. It's indispensable.
And the absolute bedrock, the starting point for any serious yogic practice, especially this kind, is the ethical foundation. Patanjali's first two limbs, the Yamas and the Yamas Niyamas.
Yes. These 10 principles aren't just a moral code. They're active practices designed to purify the mind and emotions, conserve vital energy, cha or ojas, and build the inner stability needed for the intensity of higher practices. The yamas are about ethical restraints, how we interact with the world, aimed at calming the mental agitation caused by negativity.
Like ahimsa, nonviolence. That's not just physical, right?
Not at all. It includes mental and emotional nonviolence, purifying the mind of anger, hatred, ill will. An agitated, angry mind is like a stormy ocean. You can't meditate deeply or navigate subtle states clearly. Then satya, truthfulness aligning thought, word, and deed. This creates mental clarity and integrity, vital for discerning reality from illusion, especially in subtle realms.
Asteya, non-stealing.
Which includes overcoming coveting what others have. This fosters contentment and reduces the mental noise of desire. Brahmacharya, often translated as celibacy, but more broadly, meaning moderation of the senses, conserving and sublimating vital energy. That energy, ojas, is considered the subtle fuel needed for higher experiences. And apagraha, non-possessiveness, non-greed, letting go of the burden of accumulating things, which frees the mind from attachment and fear of loss.
Okay, those are the restraints, the yamas. What about the niyamas, the personal observances?
These cultivate a positive inner environment. Shoka means purity, not just physical cleanliness, but mental purity, clearing out negativity. Santola is contentment, finding peace and acceptance regardless of external circumstances. This stabilizes the mind against ups and downs, crucial for handling potentially challenging, subtle experiences. Tapas is austerity or self-discipline, willingly undertaking practices that build willpower and purify the senses. You need resilience.
Like sticking to your practice even when it's hard.
Exactly. Svadhyaya is studying scriptures or wisdom texts, but also introspecting, observing your own mind and patterns. And Ishvara Praichidhan, surrender to the divine or a higher principle. Dedicating your actions and efforts, which helps dissolve the ego. And the ego, with its fears and limitations, is a huge barrier in subtle exploration.
So the ethical foundation is crucial because if your mind is full of agitation, fear, desire, you'll just project that onto the subtle realms, making things confusing or scary.
Precisely. An unstable or impure mind can create terrifying dreamscapes, or it might attract corresponding energies in subtle planes. A mind that's been purified and stabilized through consistent practice of yama and niyama can navigate these inner worlds with much greater clarity, safety, and discernment. It can interpret experiences correctly and integrate the lessons learned for real growth, instead of just getting caught up in psychic phenomena or ego inflation.
Makes sense. You need a clean lens to see clearly. And building on that ethical base come the more specific techniques for inner attunement.
Yes, practices designed to fine-tune the mind and the subtle energy system, preparing them for exploration. While the most advanced methods really need guidance from a qualified teacher, the principles behind them are universal.
Mantra japa is mentioned. Repetition of sacred sounds.
Yes. This isn't just mindless chanting. The repetition of a mantra is believed to have a specific vibratory effect on the subtle body and consciousness. It can be used to set a clear intention, a sankalpa, maybe specifically for achieving lucidity or a successful projection. It definitely helps quiet the constant chatter of the discursive mind by giving it a single positive focus.
And it attunes your energy.
It's said to attune your energy field to a higher frequency, making you more receptive to subtle perceptions and experiences. Again, the source notes the modern parallel some people draw with using specific sound frequencies, like that 963 hertz, aiming to stimulate energy centers like Dunya as gateways.
And then pranayama, breath control. This seems fundamental.
Absolutely fundamental, a cornerstone practice. The breath is seen as the bridge, the direct link between the gross physical body, the subtle energy body, and the mind. Controlling and directing the vital energy prana through specific breathing patterns is one of the most powerful ways to influence your state of consciousness.
How does it help prepare for these states?
Slow, deep, rhythmic breathing directly calms the nervous system, which in turn pacifies the waves of thought. This calm, focused state is necessary to achieve pratyahara, the conscious withdrawal of awareness and energy from the external senses. You need to be able to turn inward deliberately. Mastering pratyahara through pranayama is an essential step before you can consciously transition into sleep, like in Yoga Nidra, or attempt to consciously separate the subtle body.
And finally, dhyana, meditation itself.
Meditation in its various forms builds the core mental muscle, focused attention. Techniques like concentrating on the breath, a mantra, the ajna point, or even just observing thoughts all cultivate ekagrata, one-pointedness, and sustained awareness.
And you need that focus to stay present in these other states.
Absolutely. You need that trained attention to remain lucid, stable, and centered when you find yourself in the unfamiliar territory of a dreamscape or an astral plane. Without a mind accustomed to holding focus, your awareness will just get scattered, swept away by subconscious currents or the sheer novelty of the experience, and the opportunity for conscious learning or exploration is lost.
So it's really clear. Ethics, mantra, breath, meditation, these aren't optional extras. They are the essential training regimen.
They create the necessary inner conditions for navigating these inner worlds consciously, safely, and effectively for genuine spiritual development.
Which brings us right to the ultimate purpose of all this effort. It's clearly not just about having cool, weird experiences, right?
No, the tradition is adamant about that. Subtle experiences, even visions of light or blissful feelings, are still phenomena. They are tools, signposts perhaps, but definitely not the final goal. It's not about chasing psychic thrills or accumulating powers, siddhis. The masters consistently warn that becoming attached to siddhis is a classic ego trap. It can bind you even more strongly to the world of phenomena, just subtle phenomena instead of gross ones, and actually hinder liberation.
So what is the ultimate purpose then? The source highlights two main things: transcending the fear of death and accelerating self-realization.
Exactly. Let's take the fear of death first. As we discussed, it's rooted in that false identification. I am this physical body which will die. Dhyabhabuddhi.
Right.
Now, if you consciously experience your awareness, your sense of self, functioning fully and vividly, independent of the physical body, whether as a lucid witness observing a dream or during a conscious, subtle body journey, what does that do?
It gives you direct proof you're not just the body.
Precisely. It provides an unshakable experiential conviction of your own immortality, your nature as timeless awareness. This isn't belief anymore. It's jnana, direct knowledge arising from experience.
Like proving the afterlife to yourself while you're still alive.
That's a good way to put it. And that experience fundamentally rewires your relationship with mortality. Beyond that core benefit, these practices offer huge potential for psychological and spiritual growth. The lucid dreamscape, for example, acts like a direct mirror to your subconscious. You can consciously engage with challenging material, confront fears, integrate shadow aspects, maybe even heal old emotional wounds in a uniquely malleable and safe environment.
And astral travel.
According to those traditions that emphasize it, it can offer opportunities for profound learning, receiving guidance from higher beings, understanding the workings of karma from a broader perspective, gaining a cosmic viewpoint that can really shrink your earthly worries down to size. The overall aim is always transformation, moving from a state of ignorant bondage to one of enlightened freedom.
And the most profound purpose, the ultimate aim mentioned in the source, connects all this to the realization of Turīya.
Yes, this is the absolute pinnacle. Turīya is often called the fourth state. But as the Mācchukya Upanishad and masters like Ramana Maharshi explained, it's not actually another state like waking, dreaming, or deep sleep that comes and goes.
It's something else.
It is the self. It's the silent, ever-present, non-dual witness consciousness that underlies and transcends the other three states. It's the unchanging screen, the foundational reality, the Atman. It's never born, never dies, never changes. It's never really lost. It's just forgotten or veiled by our identification with the changing states and bodies.
Okay, so how do practices like lucid dreaming or conscious subtle travel lead to realizing Turīya?
Because learning to remain consciously awake and aware, while the physical body is asleep, as in subtle travel, or while the mind is deeply immersed in dreaming, as in lucid dreaming, is direct training in cultivating and stabilizing that pure witness consciousness.
You're practicing being the witness.
You're practicing disidentifying from the body-mind complex, from the content of experience, and anchoring your awareness in the stable, observing self, even when the usual anchors of the physical body and waking world are absent or altered.
So it's like a continuum. You start by cultivating awareness moment to moment in daily waking life.
Exactly. Then you extend that awareness into the internal worlds. First, maybe becoming lucid in dreams. With deeper practice, perhaps maintaining awareness even as the mind dissolves towards deep sleep, experiencing it as conscious, peaceful rest, not just a blackout.
And that unbroken awareness, regardless of state, that's Turīya.
That unbroken continuity of conscious presence, that perpetual illuminated vigilance that remains steady whether the body-mind is waking, dreaming, or in deep sleep, that is the lived experience of Turīya. It's the ultimate lucidity, the final awakening.
So it's not about having more experiences, but about realizing the experiencer.
Precisely. In that final realization, the seeker doesn't need to dream lucidly or travel astrally anymore as specific goals, because they have discovered themselves to be the timeless, spaceless reality. The awareness within which all worlds, all states, all experiences arise and subside like waves on the ocean. It's the complete transformation into the unlimited, ever-awake consciousness of the Absolute.
Wow. Okay. That is quite a journey we've taken. We really covered a lot of ground there.
We did.
We started with that fundamental yogic idea, consciousness is primary. Then we mapped out the subtle anatomy, the different bodies, the sheaths. We looked at the three main states of awareness as distinct dimensions. And then we dove into how conscious astral travel, sūkṣma yatra, and lucid dreaming, svapna sadhana, are understood within that whole framework.
And we really stress that these aren't just, exotic techniques you pick up quickly. They demand that serious ethical foundation, Yamas Niyamas, and dedicated practice, mantra, breathwork, meditation. It's a whole system.
Right. And we saw how those modern masters, Yogananda, Ramana Maharshi, Vivekananda, offered different but complementary perspectives, viewing these states as objective realities to explore, or as powerful illustrations of the mind's illusory nature, or as verifiable functions of the superconscious mind.
Showing different pathways, really, but all ultimately pointing beyond the experiences themselves, emphasizing that the real goal isn't power or escapism. It's about gaining that experiential conviction of your own immortal nature, and crucially, training that witness consciousness, using these practices as a direct gateway towards Turīya, towards complete self-realization, liberation.
So what does this all mean for you listening right now?
Well, it suggests that these states we often just brush off dreams, weird sensations, maybe even glimpses of something more from this deep yogic perspective. They are potentially sacred territories. They might hold vital clues to understanding who and what you are beyond just your physical self. It definitely challenges our everyday assumptions about reality.
It really invites you to look much deeper into your own consciousness, the nature of your own mind. And here's maybe the really provocative thought to leave you with. If, as someone like Ramana Maharshi strongly suggests, the dream state is a powerful tool for understanding the illusory projected nature of the waking state, what might it mean to truly awaken within this waking state itself? What parts of your everyday reality, your sense of self, your world, what parts might actually be mithya, just waiting to be seen through by the light of that deeper awareness, that inner witness?
That's definitely something to contemplate.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.